And you're welcome back to Morning Express. Now for the second leg of interviews on the program this morning. We're being graced and our studio is being graced by Professor Okey Ikechukwu, MNI, Professor of Strategic Management and Human Capital Development. Now he's also a Professor of Social and Management Sciences, as well as the Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Very welcome to you. Good morning, Prof.
morning.
It's wonderful to have you here in the studio.
My pleasure.
Now, we saw recent comments by the Emir of Kano State, Emir Sanusi II, citing that he has, the solutions to Nigeria's woes, especially in terms of the economy, and also relating it to the tax reform bills, which has been a bottleneck, amongst the Nigerian populace for quite some time. Now, out of these comments, the presidency has also responded to him, citing that, in quote, "We don't need Sanusi's stamp of approval for our laudable policies." A trade of words between the emir and the presidency. What was your first reaction to this to this development, rather comical development?
My first reaction was amusement, actually.
Okay.
Because Sanusi's statement rests on the presumption that he actually has the solution, but is unwilling to give it.
Yeah.
He's not the Almighty. So that's his assumption. That assumption may be wrong. Secondly, I asked myself, if I am a traditional ruler of that stature, and I have solution to a social problem, a political problem, an economic problem. In other words, I have solutions to a problem that will enhance the life of the average Nigerian, including my subjects.
Yes.
Should I hold it back?
Just because I don't like the current administration?
Yes. Well, I don't know whether it's not liking, because you see in the further statements he said he had tried to help in the past. So I'm not sure that even if that's what he has chosen to do, I am not sure his profile is enhanced by making such a thing public. Oh, I've since decided not to help this government. Who says you have the solution? Who says without you the government cannot succeed? How does that affect public perception of you as a responsible adult, as somebody sitting on a revered throne? Whether you like it or not, from any part of the country you say you're from, the emirship of Kano is part of the history of North Africa. It's part of the history of the trans-Saharan trade. It's the part of the history of a culture that runs through centuries.
Yes.
Notwithstanding the controversy around it right now, Sanusi himself, from my knowledge of him in the public domain, has a very credible profile. So I am not at all convinced that it's in his interest, or in the interest of the nation, for him to have made such, in my view, a self-diminishing statement.
Now, even having served as a one-time CBN governor, somebody who has been at the forefront of Nigeria's economic, policies in the past and all of that, it appears that he might really have had credible solutions to the problems that we are currently facing as a nation. But why do you think that the presidency is citing that it doesn't need his stamp of approval? He's not saying that he needs to approve or doesn't need to approve the administration's policies. He's only stating that he has the solutions.
You see, the first thing to note about the statement of the presidency is the decent language.
Yeah.
It didn't start by calling names, which I think is a good development now. Digressing from the subject matter a little, I became somewhat concerned when I saw that the presidency was procuring spokespersons almost 3 times every day, continuously, until the number got to 10.
To 10, yeah.
And fortunately, very fortunately, all the noise they were making has declined. So we get information. Decent, mature, structured, well presented to inform and educate and not drive controversy. So I also read the submissions from the Minister of Information. It is factually correct that a government does not need the approval of any citizen, individual citizen, in order to drive a policy. Even if the policy is wrong, that makes those in government human. So I completely agree with that they don't need his endorsement. But the other addition I will make is that, and that's regarding the statement of the government. That statement admitted a couple of things. Number one, that there are pains on the table at the moment for everybody. Number two, that the presidency is convinced that those will be temporary pains with long-term gains in view. Number three, the presidency did not say we don't need anybody's help. So all of that, it's an evolving story and situation. And as far as I'm concerned, it's part of national discourse. I cannot propose or take a terminal position on the matter. There might be counterfactuals again that will emerge, but the conversation continues. I think that's how a democracy develops. The emir has given his view freely in the public space. The presidency has also responded and said, yes, we're entitled to that view, and that criticisms and suggestions are welcome. You notice it's in the minister's statement.
Yes, I noticed.
Having put that on the table, there could be third-party interventions. It doesn't call for political or emotional extremism. Some people could now say, as we've seen in our recent history, oh, why would Sanusi do that? You know, that would have been the immediate reaction.
Or why didn't he carry out all this advice that he has for the current administration when he was CBN governor?
That's even the third leg of it. The one angle will be for people to jump out immediately and start calling him names. Fortunately, that pattern has disappeared. You know, some of the people who had come on as spokespersons of all kinds of media assistants and all of that, it was that mindset with which they came on the job, and fortunately they are disappearing progressively.
One after the other.
One after the other. And it's a major relief because national communication must have a pivotal anchor. Look, if you make me spokesperson for the president today, it will be my personal views and the things I find out. If you make me Minister of Information, I'm sitting on a mountain at the top. The body of that mountain that's spreads like this goes to all the states of the Federation,
like
where as a minister, I have information centers in every state of the Federation and in every local government. They feed me information. That's the feedback system. That enables me to speak on anything because I have personnel paid by the federal government in all these locations.
Who feed you credible information?
Credible information because these are federal information centers established and have been in existence for decades.
Yeah.
Now, if we can restore and reaffirm that, which I think is what's in progress, then national communication will have the dignity you find in the national communication of other nations.
Well, Prof, now one of the comments made by the Emir as well, alongside the fact that he has solutions to Nigeria's woes but will not proffer these solutions, is the fact that the presidency lacks a credible team. The president himself lacks a credible team. Talking about from the CBN to the CBN governor to the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy, and all these top guns within the presidency. The Emir has blatantly called them incompetent. Should we be worried?
Why should I be worried that somebody has expressed an opinion? Supposing you look at me now and say, Prof. Ikechukwu, you're an idiot. Or I think you are an idiot.
That is my opinion.
Thank you. First, you're not an authority on idiocy. I don't need to have a headache because you express a personal opinion which may be uninformed, which may be what you overheard other people saying, which may be purely speculative, and which may actually be an expression of your anger.
Now, that's a different twist to it.
That's a fact. That if you say this is bad, it may actually turn to mean I don't like it. Not that it's bad in itself if assessed.
Yeah.
So I like to put that conceptual clarification on the table. The second thing is that Emir Sanusi is an informed, well-educated, well-exposed, and competent public servant, and also a credible. He has held the traditional institution with some dignity. If you remember the interventions he made on girl-child education and all of that. But having said all of that, having said he has a right to that point of view, the question is, it's our duty to interrogate what he has said. What if he's correct? That's number one. Number two, could it be correct that the president assembled a comprehensive list of incompetent persons to help him manage the country? Now, that's a little difficult to believe. There might be somebody because even when you talk economics, what is your orientation within the field of economics? A development economist will have a different mindset from somebody who has a stronger background in auditing and accounting. For them, it's look, the development economist is an adventurer, is an investor, is an entrepreneur.
What do we do to grow?
Thank you. That's the focus.
Yeah.
So if you now say, oh, you've assembled, you mean I have a strong background in financial management, and my concern, my orientation is that of resource auditing, resource supervision, gatekeeping. Any submission from a development economist will set the alarm bells for me. So the question, from what perspective did Emir Sanusi come to that conclusion? We don't know the premises. We don't know what he means by them not being good enough. We understand what he's saying about some of the policies not delivering and all of that. So again, it's not a matter for panic. And I'll take it to the earlier point I made.
Yes.
This very statement of his would have let out all the attack dogs on the planet. Fortunately, that is becoming less and less. And this, for whatever is worth, let that be one of the things we get from this government. People in public communication should convey some sense of personal dignity.
And decorum.
Should not decorum and not celebrate the fact that, oh, you see how I insulted that fellow, let him talk again. No, no, no. Go to Jeleba, go to the Sabongeri area, go to Iwe Karodi Nonicha, do all of that. Leadership is about ennobling the populace by your conduct, making them to feel constrained not to do certain things.
Now, Prof, you have quite beautifully, laid out your point here, but still in line with, the government, the presidency's policies, which many people have termed an anti-people policy. This has been in the media and the press for quite some time. Persons like the former Vice President Okey Ikechukwu Abubakar have come out on number of occasions to blow hot on the policies of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. But I want you to react to a headlining story on the Daily Courier this morning. Let's take a look at the Daily Courier and have a report by the National Bureau of Statistics about Nigeria's current inflation rate. Let's pick up the Daily Courier now together with a headliner there. Nigeria's inflation climbs to 34.8% in December 2024. Accompanying straplines add, attributed to increased consumer spending during the festive period. Staples saw price hikes fueling increase in food inflation. Experts differ on the impacts of fiscal and monetary policies on inflationary trends. Now, these are the straplines accompanying the headliner there. But the major thing that I want you to react to, Prof, is the 34.8% hike in our inflation rate at the moment. It doesn't look good for the country.
It cannot look good for any country, and it's not surprising.
Why is it not surprising?
Because, you see, when you begin an analysis of a social fact, you must work with a proper sense of history.
Take us through.
Fine. They've linked this to December, to the Christmas spending from the Office of the Statistics,
National Bureau of Statistics.
From the Bureau. Yeah. The question is the Bureau itself correct?
I mean, if it is the NBS, we should trust the NBS.
We should. You said should. We didn't say we must. In my own case, I don't, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
What has been going on in the last nearly 24 months was fairly predictable from 4 years ago. Both in terms of inflation, crisis of level of living.
For observers like yourself?
Of course. Look, the farmers who planted in 2022, 2021, 2023, part of 20, how many of them were able to harvest up to 40% of what they planted? That's question number one. Number two, many of those in refugee camps today all over the country, particularly the Northeast, which is a strong source of grains and heavy food items.
And also the hub of terrorist activities.
Now, having become the hub of terrorist activities, those who ought to be in farms producing rice, wheat, sugarcane, and refugee camps, they are being fed by the state. They've fallen under the consumption umbrella. They are no longer producing. So I wrote about this as far back from 2019 to 2023. You'll find no less than 4 different submissions in the newspaper. You know, I maintain a back page on this day every Saturday.
Okay.
I've spoken about it on television.
Oh,
and that was under Buhari. And when I think when Tinubu took over, that very night of the swearing, I was on Channels Television, and these are some of the issues I raised. So for us to suddenly pretend that, oh, inflation is coming, everybody saw it coming. You cannot get lower prices for products that are not available in the market. If 5 of us are looking for cars to buy and there are 2 cars, the price will go up. Food production and supply has been declining. So to market, you can't just say it's December spending. Now, okay, December is over. Has it come down?
This is January.
This is January coming to an end. And what was it like all the while going back? 3, and more critically, and that's why I say, yes, we can say, oh, you must believe the Bureau of Statistics is a federal institution. They're doing their work. I don't want to go into that or contest that. But I'm also constrained to ask myself, how many times have I looked at the facts from the Bureau and was convinced, totally convinced that it's correct based on the facts on the ground? When you speak of inflation rates, when such platforms have attempted to give the average cost of food items, rice is now at this and that.
And then you go to the market and
there's no relationship. Totally. That's two. Three, what's the spread of their personnel to warrant the data? In other words, it's the kind of thing we'll be suffering from the developed nations. When I was head of communications in the Federal Ministry of Education, we got in there met statistics from reputable international organizations. The UNDP, DFID, UNICEF, all of them. Now, the information we got was that Nigeria had 9,700 secondary schools. The minister said, this is a little difficult to believe. I said, Honorable Minister.
The number is less or more?
I said, it's also very difficult for me to believe, because if I even think of just the number of schools in my state. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the ministry directed that a census of Nigerian secondary schools be carried out. It was done.
By the ministry?
And by the ministry.
Not the NBS?
Not the international community, not the NBS that had been hearing this for all these years and kept quiet. We confirmed nearly 15,000 secondary schools as against 9,700. That was the official figure for planning education in Nigeria. We had certain schools that had not been inspected for 15 months, 15 years. Secondary schools.
No government presence whatsoever.
Look, no government intervention and monitoring. There, if you don't have a number, the correct number of children you have, how will you provide food for them? Now, what point am I leading up to? The tendency to mistake bandit statistics for factual statistics. And in fact, this one I'm sure you're very conversant with. The question of how many Nigerian children are out of school. We're still leading up to the question of data.
Yeah.
Now, you will recall that for 10 years or thereabouts, we were told that 10 million children were out of school in Nigeria. Correct. That's a large number, and it was everywhere all over the world. Now, the same 10 million cannot be out of school for 10 years. The number will either increase or decrease. Secondly, I also didn't think it was true. So, what did we do? We take the school census. That's a census of Nigerian children in school to compare with the 2005 national census. Now, by the school census, by the national census, the number, you have a certain age bracket that should be in secondary school, yes. Right? Now, the age bracket that should be in secondary school in Nigeria, based on the 2005 thereabout census, was 47 point something million. The number in school was less than 23 million. So that even at the primary level alone, you have more than 20 million out of school. At the secondary level, the number that should be in secondary school, given the national population, was 33.9 million. The actual number of school was 6.4. So at the secondary level, you had over 27 youth out of school.
Out of school.
The number that should be university itself.
Which is a very dangerous figure, considering the fight against insecurity that we are currently faced with.
You've linked it completely. Now, when that energetic population is not engaged and is not into vocational skills, they must eat. Their number is on the increase. Criminality, small, opportunistic, and sometimes full-blown. Now, what am I leading up to? The question of the credibility of national statistics, the question of the validity of national planning based on data available to it. So when we are told, oh, inflation has gone up, and it was in December, the natural reflex is to say, you see, these Tinubu people have brought this. Also, if it was under Jonathan, you see what Jonathan is doing to this country. I don't accept that pattern of socio-political analysis. Every social event has historical roots. Every social event could be worsened or made better by decisions. Now, there's the view that some of the challenges were made worse, were worsened by the decisions of the government. And if you look at the fuel increase, for instance, things were already bad. It certainly worsened things for people, among other things.
The flotation of the naira
is also another factor. But when you then take those factors and you isolate them and treat them as the sole causes, you allow the old culprits to hide under the table as if they are not involved. And when I speak of culprits, I'm not talking about individuals. The problems, the points of impact, strengthening the crisis. The question of is it true, for instance, that lawmakers are quite a number of them are owners of bureau de change. Is it true that those who should be aiding national development are sabotaging it and getting richer?
Is it true that NGOs or international organizations are complicit in the Boko Haram insurgency in the north?
In that case, I can tell you that it's true.
Fantastic.
I am involved. Look, the Northeast, well, I don't want to go. I only came back from see the issue.
Okay.
Two of us are running NGOs. We are funded from outside the country. And we need to send in regular reports. There's crisis. Each year we go and pay 6 months rent or 1 year. All of a sudden we're paying 10 years rent.
That's another question I was going to come to with the recent interview made by the Chief of Defense Staff on Al Jazeera. Now, one of the things he mentioned was that there is some sort of international conspiracy against the country, and that has continuously fueled the Boko Haram insurgency in the Northeast for, 16 years, since 2009 up until now. And that's another thing that most people have always questioned, is the reason why these NGOs pay rent years upfront. How are they certain that this insurgency will not end in the next 3, 4, 5 years? Because
the project is designed. Let me even spread it beyond. Because when we say, oh, the Chief of Army Staff or Chief of Defense Staff said, the tendency is for us to say, what do you expect? Is it not these soldiers? They will tell lies to hide the fact they are not performing. I was a guest of the Multinational Joint Task Force in N'Djamena in, I think that was 2022, thereabouts.
Yeah.
That's the military of the 4 countries affected, and there were frightening discoveries we made. Number one, you have facilities, I think in Chad, belonging to one of the developed nations, by means of which you can not only see the entire country, but if the satellite is being done, they will tell the color of the second hand in my watch.
As long as you are in view.
As long as you beam, and you can always beam across 1,000 miles. Now, what am I saying? Sambisa Forest has a definite location. Movement has a definite location. Chibok girls were said to have been seen while they were being moved. Question: why is it not deployed to take them out?
I mean, moving quite a huge amount of girls all at once must have taken a lot of effort and time as well.
Beyond that, the fact that Boko Haram can easily be isolated on air. Fact number 2, the global arms trade, the American arms industry, the Ukrainian arms industry, before their own war started, they need the crisis in North Nigeria, in Africa, to remain in business. So the global arms trade is a factor. Also the problem of Nigeria, becoming too powerful, too much of a voice in international affairs. The international community did not quite forgive this country for the ICOMOG intervention.
In Sierra Leone and Liberia.
Yes. Babangida, quote unquote, dared to intervene. Meanwhile, we are supposed to ask permission from them before we breathe. And you see that thing, by the time it ended, it was described as a UN operation. So all of that brought into the mix. Now, while they're in N'Djamena, there was this Frenchman, I don't remember his name. He runs being a communication person, I was part of, I had to look into some of the things that was going on. So he had stations running around in the 4 countries. At that moment, he had received a funding of, I think, about $11 million. I was talking about, how he's doing this and that, and I just chuckled. Nobody was being spoken to. The Boko Haram insurgency has taken a life of its own. When Buratai said it can be stopped after he knew what he was saying. Now, the people educate the local communities on what stations not to listen to. Oh, yes. So you say, we are doing strategic communication. BBC Hausa Service is telling them they are the stations they've been indoctrinated not to listen to.
Not to listen to, because they feel like it is from the West.
Not just from the West, but that these are haram. These are haram stations.
Now, you're making quite very shocking revelations, Prof, and I really wish we had more time to dwell on this, but hopefully we will have you back in the studio sometime very soon to dwell on this particular issue of insurgency, because you seem to have a lot of knowledge about it, and it will be a pleasure to have you back. But I must thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you on the
Hold
program.
on. Have we been on for up to 10 minutes?
It's been 30 minutes.
Huh?
Interesting.
No further comment.
Thank you so much, Prof. Well, Prof must have lost track of time, but it is the end of this particular interview segment. That has been Professor Okey Ikechukwu, MNI, Professor of Strategic Management and Human Capital Development, and also Professor of Social and Management Sciences. He also doubles as the Executive Director, Development Specs Academy, lending his thoughts to us on issues of national interest.